Um, because we've been asking everybody this, what was your introduction to the labyrinth? Or did you find it, or did it find you?
I would have to say that it found me. It was a result of reading an article in New Age magazine back in 1995 that talked about labyrinths on the West Coast, and this woman priest wore an artress, and I found myself getting incredibly captivated just by reading this article. And it wasn't long after that, had no idea what I was doing, but went to the hardware store one morning and picked up some twine and some landscape pegs and crawled around in my backyard and put in my first labyrinth.
Was it a sharp pattern?
No. Oh, heck no. No, it was a classical Cretan design. But it looked like Stonehenge after you put bricks on top of the twine, especially when sunset hit. And so we decided to put torches out and invite people over, and it was a nice start to my labyrinth experience. And it's gone off from there.
Now, I have heard stories about how you hosted a get-together, a board meeting, I guess, at your house. Can you give me just a brief couple stories about what you remember from that early meeting, and how has that continued to have bearing on where TLS finds itself today?
Certainly. I believe that was the first official board meeting as a society that we hosted, and a lot of that meeting and prior meetings talked about bylaws, and while that can be somewhat heavy material to go back and forth with, it was something that the early society had to deal with. We had to create infrastructure, and so that's something that continues. I know we've got a few different bylaw changes tonight that or this afternoon, that we're going to be voting on. So as a result of that, not all the things in the Labyrinth Society are glitzy and glamorous things. They're just things that help us move forward and created what we have today. So another big thing that we did at that meeting is we went over what would our logo be, because I believe it was either October or November of that same year we were going to hold our first gathering in Colorado. And so we all felt, now that we're a society, we need a logo. How are we going to put our name out there? And so there were all these different suggestions. It was hours of back and forth stuff. No, that doesn't look good. Oh, come on, what are you thinking? And so I don't remember who brought this book to the gathering, to the meeting, but we all kind of became enamored. Oh, there it is. We all became enamored with this image. We thought, oh, that's it. It's primitive, but it's cool because it's a labyrinth and all that. And it comes out of this book by Carol Shields called Larry's Party, which has absolutely nothing to do with labyrinths. So I don't know if Helen brought it or who brought it, but the neat thing was that it got signed by every one of the original board members at that meeting, and they handed it to me as a gift.
Where is that? Where does that rock art come from?
Actually don't know. There was, let me see, I put a couple of notes in here. I meant to talk to David about it. It's one of a series of labyrinth carvings in Italy, northern Italy. That's all I've, oh, wait a second.
Is it Valcamonica?
I don't know if it's Valcamonica, but it comes from the Iron Age, so somewhere between 500 BC and 1000 BC. And, oh, I think Jeff Sayward talked about it being Emanuel Inati. It's a redrawing of the Emanuel Inati image.
And how did Robert?
You're right. I think, and I've got Valcamonica here.
How did Robert Ferre feel about it?
You know, I don't remember specifically, but I know we had Sig Lundgren couldn't make the meeting, being in England at the time, So we had a speakerphone in the middle of the room, and he would chime in from time to time about, what are you guys thinking? Are you really moving in this direction? So there was a lot of that stuff going on. And so I'm guessing that Robert wasn't completely on board with it either. But there was a moment in that meeting where it seemed like everyone was more or less saying, this is going to be our logo. But that changed. And I don't remember exactly how that changed. But maybe because it wasn't businessy enough, or there wasn't enough flair to it that would specifically point back to the Labyrinth Society.
According to David, he said, Robert said, it's not even a labyrinth.
Oh. Well, okay, and Robert would say that a lot in our board meetings, so that's, but when you look at labyrinths these days and all the different variations on a theme, I don't think Robert would be completely happy with all of the different designs that are being called labyrinths these days. Mm-hmm. And so we just have gotten much more at peace with the idea of transformative archetypal designs that ultimately can help people grow and focus and become more peaceful.
Which is a nice segue to how do you use a labyrinth in your practice as you're a clinical psychologist?
Actually, I'm a psychotherapist, clinical psychotherapist. And so I use the double finger labyrinth design known as the Intuipath. I use it to assist my clients in relaxing, and through that relaxation, it helps them delve more deeply inside much more easily. And as a result, the aha experiences about their particular issues come to the surface much more readily. And as a result of that, their amount of time that they need to be in counseling is shortened significantly. With the double pattern, what happens is I'm moving my finger through my own connected labyrinth that I'm connected with their labyrinth. The Intuipath design is a double finger labyrinth. And so while I'm relaxing in mine and I'm getting more in touch with what is my blind spots, they're doing the same thing. And so then our energy comes together and we're much more intuitively connected. So it's one human being versus someone on a pedestal called a therapist trying to develop trust with a client. This is more of two human beings who recognize their fallibility, working together to see what can be done to help with these counseling issues.
Did you design that?
Yes. Yes. I've designed it. I have a patent on it. So, yeah.
Have you presented it among peers?
Yes. Yes. A number of different conferences. I love doing that because it really helps break my peers out of their schooling, which is you don't share your personal stuff with your clients. You're separate from them and all that. And I have found that to be absolutely antagonistic to the counseling process and to getting to issue resolution quickly and easily.
Do you have a favorite labyrinth pattern?
I would have to say it's the Man in the Maze, which is a Native American design coming out of the Southwest of the United States. And the pattern is so unique in the way that the paths shrink and expand as you go through the design. I liken it to the labyrinth is breathing. It's inhaling and it's exhaling. And the idea of moving through a design where the path widens, that feels very much like a more expanded consciousness. And when it not shrivels, but when it gets narrower, then it's like coming back to that kind of feeling like you're closed in a little bit in your perception. So very much a breathing consciousness that this labyrinth pattern brings to people. And we have one on our property and people love to walk it. And we've made a little handheld one that people enjoy as well. Yeah, thanks for that question.
As far as questions go, often in these interviews, we can part company and then 20 minutes later go, oh man, if I would have just asked that question, it's, oh. Or the person sitting in your chair will go, you know, so let's take a second out right now and kind of process with that as an opportunity to know that people in the Labyrinth Society and beyond will be viewing this, and they will benefit from your wisdom and your insight and your words. So here's your big chance.
My big chance.
Your big chance. And levity. She talked about levity, and I said, this man's going to levitate? I'm going to get that on film.
So, this is an amazing, heartfelt organization. It's been that way for 18 years, and I'm sure that as time goes on, people will recognize that this is really the model for how an organization ought to work. Yeah, we have our tough times, and yeah, we don't agree with one another all the time, but there is a quality to the respect that people have for one another and their ability to explore the possibility that they might be putting forth something that's more about ego than it is about moving the society forward. And that was early on. That's why I wanted to be part of this organization. I recognized it right away among the early board members and the people that started to become members after the fact. I loved being the membership chair, the original one, and it was before technology and all the things that make it easier, and I loved the personal contact with each and every new member. And they knew that if they had a question, a problem, they knew who to contact. And so I think that it's important that as we get to be bigger and bigger and bigger, that we don't lose track of communicating with our members and having membership benefits, that people really, they say, wow, it's so different being a non-member versus a member. I really want to join this organization. I really want to be part of this heartfelt circle.
One of the things that I'm witnessing as a novice to this process is the timeliness of this. It's not work, and it's not practice exactly. It seems to be just a serendipitous relationship. So can you talk about the timeliness? That these are complex times, and yet the labyrinth in the practice, the meditation, the whole process seems to be very needed.
Yeah. Well, I think, and it's been said many times before, that the labyrinth meets you where you are. So unless you have a complete aversion because of maybe religious upbringing or whatever, it meets you where you are. And if you're willing to engage the sacred space that is the labyrinth, then that's all you need to do. I was reminded last evening after the dancers were done and I was walking the labyrinth for the first time here, that I couldn't really see the path very well because it was kind of dark. And it was getting darker. And it was becoming kind of tedious to try to follow the path. And the thought was, well, okay, yeah, but you're going to need to walk out again. Walk it back out. And it was a long way in, and now it's going to be a long way out. And I thought, wait a second, why am I creating rules for myself? And so I just simply, when I was done at the center, I just walked straight out. And so even after 20 years of teaching about labyrinths, building labyrinths, researching labyrinths, writing about labyrinths, I was still making up my own rules. And it isn't about that. It's about this being an intuitive playground for the spirit. And if people are willing to engage it, regardless of their religion, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of what they do for a living, regardless of whether they are comfortable being with other people, it doesn't matter. If they engage it, there's a chance that something beautiful is going to come out of it. And that's, that's why I've been engaged in labyrinths as long as I have been.
I love that. What did you say? Intuitive playground.
Intuitive playground for the spirit.
I love that. That's a T-shirt.
That's a pearl.
That is a pearl.
I call that a pearl.
Okay.
One of the things that personally I've always found so marvelous about the organization is this complete sense of tolerance and acceptance. Because it's not about me, so this is a question to you as well. Find myself kind of going, oh, well, this person is, come on, can you pick up the pace, and then get out of the way, you're being kind of a pill. And, and I have to go, no, it's just, everybody does their own thing, and it's all right, that sense of acceptance and tolerance. And that was built in very early on, right?
Yes, yes. We recognize that we're all volunteers and we all have busy lives outside of the organization. And so as a result of that, there's going to be some deadlines that are not going to be followed. There's a lot of the intricate infrastructure that doesn't necessarily get it doesn't get all the attention that it needs all the time, because what's going on with each human being that's part of whatever project we've been involved in, that's more important. The synergy of all of that is more important than this newsletter has to get out this particular day. And so that was a good lesson for me, because I always thought of myself as I'm very timely. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right away. And I ran afoul of that fairly early in the organization, because some people were just too busy. They would take on way too much for their schedules, but they didn't know it until they got immersed in what they had chosen to do or had committed to do. And so we all had to learn that if everything doesn't come off like clockwork, that's okay. It's all about the circle. It's all a part of the spiral. And so we just are going to meet people in different places along that spiral. And it's okay that they're not walking at the same pace we are. It's okay if they're not walking in the same direction we are. But if things need to get done, then it's okay to walk around them. It's okay to bypass them. If something needs to get done, you do it yourself. And I think that's an important lesson for our society, but it's just as important a lesson for our society. Did I say that twice?
Well,
our
the
overall
TLS
society. Yes, TLS versus the society in which we live and grow in. Yeah, which is also TLS.
Indeed. More? Anything for you?
Endless amounts of questions, but I think we probably need to have lunch and go on to the next thing, right?
That sounds good to me. Really, thanks very much.
Anything else you want to add or comment on?
Just say that I did research on the labyrinth with children with ADHD, and using the double finger labyrinth pattern that I had developed, found that a lot of those kids, using it for a very minimal amount of time, 3 times a week, that a lot of the behaviors that are considered not so great behaviors, either at home or at school, diminished significantly. So I'm proud of that. Lauren Artress pushed me into doing that, and I say that fondly. But I'm not a researcher, so a lot of learning lessons in that experience. Yeah.
That's fabulous. I'd like to take a photo.